the Dead Sea Scrolls. What the Dead Sea Scrolls are, how were they found, and why is it important? Let's dive right in. So what are they? The Dead Sea Scrolls are a collection of writings written on the oldest form of paper that we know, called papyrus. Say, ooh, papyrus. Ooh. This is authentic papyrus. Somebody went into some river, took out some reeds, flattened them, squished them together into this. This was what they used to write. They wrote books on them, put these books, wrapped them up into little jars of clay, and they hid them for 2,000 years at least, if not more. Some were big, some were small, some had lots of writing, some had little writing. Some of the writings and the papers were completely deteriorated, and some were immaculately preserved. I'm going to go ahead and pass this around. So now, where were they found? I didn't tell you, but you're going to have to use your imagination today. So, unless you got the papyrus, I'd like you to close your eyes until I tell you to open them up. And we're going to go on a journey together. It's the mid-1900s, and you feel the wind because you're now outside. The wind's cascading off the rocky cliffs and the hot, dry deserts. You see some caves to the right of you, and to the left is a bunch of fertile grassland because you are a shepherd. And as you're a shepherd, tending your sheep, with the wind blowing, you start to see one of them scurries off. He scurries off, so you go ahead and start running down there. You go chase, go jump over a brook and through the woods, and you see that he stops in front of a cave. So you know from your previous experience, when you see these sheep get lost, when they go into a cave, you can typically make a sound and scare them. So what you decide to do is reach down, dust off a little pebble, throw it in the cave, scare them out. So you reach down, grab that pebble, do the wind up, you do the leg thing like the baseball pitchers, you throw it and then, whoa, hold on. Something just broke. In fact, as you left the 99 for the one street sheep that went astray, you came across in clay jars one of the most important archaeological discoveries of our time. You can go ahead and open up your eyes. You found one of the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is a replica of the Dead Sea Scrolls, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Scroll of Isaiah. This is the book of Isaiah. It is in a jar of clay. I encourage you to actually take this out and look at it. This is a pretty good copy of it. Remember, we're going on an adventure, guys. Because your eyes are supposed to be closed till right now, so it's a surprise I changed, right? It's all good. So as you pass this around, we're going to talk about why it's important. These are important because they prove that a book can be copied thousands of years and still be accurate. Using this scroll, which represents the scroll of Isaiah, we're going to talk about how they were properly copied. So how do you know if something is copied correctly? Let's say I have the newsletter, and I want to know if this newsletter was copied correctly. How would I know if this was copied correctly? I would need the master copy or the oldest copy. Does anyone have a copy of the newsletter?
I happen to have a copy of this week's and last week's newsletter.
Well, if it came out last week, why don't you give me last week's because it's the oldest copy you have.
I can do that.
Yeah, go ahead. Wow, how convenient, Brandon.
Yeah, I just happen to have
Wow, in fact, we can tell that the older copy is identical, while the newer copy has a little bit of changes on it. So we're going to go ahead with the oldest copy.
Oh, okay, all right.
And I can tell that they're identical, right? If you're trying to figure out if something's identical, you want the oldest copy. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
So historians actually did very similar methods. They wanted to see if these scrolls, these books, were accurately copied. So we have an example of the 21st century book of Isaiah, one of the scrolls from it. Now what would happen is they would compare this with the oldest copy they had. Back in the day, they used to take copying of these books very, very seriously. How seriously? So seriously that they would flip both open to a random page. The same random page. They would take a ruler. Does anyone have a measuring tape or a ruler? Wow, you have every measuring tape. Why don't you come on up? And they would go to the exact same spot on both pages to see if the same letter was on the same page. So someone say a number 1 through 30.
1 through 30.
I heard 20.
20.
So it's up and down 30, so go 20. And then give me a number 1 through 25. 25. We're going to go a little shorter than 25 because that's the end of the paper.
20.
20. Okay, so 20, 20.
20, 20. So this one's 20.
Okay, so here,
And then we go 20. Which is going to put me right at the I.
so at an I. So if this was copied properly, we should see the same letter I.
That's 20 there. And then that's right on the side of the I.
All right, so we know it was copied accurately. Thank you, Brandon,
Thank you.
being
Oh, yeah.
so available. So typically this would happen within books created within a generation or so. They were able to do this with historical accuracy to say that it was identical with books that were written 2,000 years apart. So there was no obvious variations besides very small things that didn't change any of the meanings. In fact, only one word in the entire scroll was different. Now let's say there was something off. Let's say instead of that I, it was an L. What would happen? Well, they'd often take it, they'd burn it up, they'd arrest the guy, and sometimes even execute him because they took it that seriously. That copying these was that serious. That's why you can go 2,000 years and still have the same message, nearly identical. So we went over what the Dead Sea Scrolls are. We went over how they were found, and we also went over why they were important. Now I give you this challenge to take your own deep dive into why they thought a scroll like this was so important to be translated and copied so accurately.